So, who here enjoyed the Austrian Grand Prix? Okay, no one. Actually, take that back. I know a fair few people who did, but I also know a lot of people who didn't, criticised it, said it was a terrible, boring race, put us to sleep, and that F1 is fundamentally broken beyond repair and will never be fixed, and it's terrible, we want our sport back. Was it really that bad? Have things really gotten this bad in Formula 1? Is there a grand overall problem with the racing? Or are we just overrating the past? Or are we just too busy to criticise this era that we not realise how good we actually have it? This and a whole lot more on Dre TV.
Welcome to you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Just try. I wanna be the only one to make it through the
Formula 1 is in an interesting place at the moment. Honestly, this has probably been the most criticised season I've ever known as a fan. I've been on social media watching Formula 1 races since 2010, and in that time, those were effectively what's known as the Sebastian Vettel years. A year, or an era I should say, where the sport was often so criticised by letting one guy win all to the time and it was called boring. When I've said before, Red Bull wasn't ever really that dominant. Maybe a season and a half out of the 4 that Vettel won the championship. 2010 was an all-time classic season, as was 2012. So you kind of have to ask yourself, 1, was Vettel really that dominant? And 2, who cares when we had 2 of the greatest seasons in modern era, of the modern era, essentially, in that time span? How bad was it really? Compare that to now, 2015, and the Austrian Grand Prix we had this past Sunday was one of the most heavily criticised I've ever seen on social media. People saying it was a 3 out of 10 race, people saying it was so boring, people saying that the race put them to sleep, even though they were still tweeting. That's actually quite a talent now I think about it. And while Austria wasn't an all-time classic by any stretch of the imagination, I really don't think the criticism of this race was justified. Yes, we didn't have a battle for the lead, but at the same time the midfield racing was thoroughly captivating. People were saying, oh what, why didn't they focus more on the leaders? Do you really want to see Rosberg's on board for 50 laps at a time and be thoroughly entertained by it? I don't think so. The battle between, Massa and Vettel was okay, but it never got going. But the midfield of guys like Maldonado, Kvyat, Ricciardo, Nasser, Hülkenberg, Perez was awesome, and it made the race quite decent. Not a classic, like I said, by any stretch, but a decent Grand Prix. And this is one of the complaints that fans have got at the moment, is that if a race is not captivating unless there's a battle for the lead. My response to that is, your favourite race of all time, Canada 2011, didn't have a battle for the lead until the final lap, and that was only because the leading driver in said race bottled it on the final lap. So, not really a valid criticism in my opinion. Other great races like Valencia 2012 didn't have a battle for the lead, after the guy who was a dominant leader in said race retired with an alternator failure. See what I'm getting at here? Here's the thing about Formula 1 that many fans don't understand, and it's more of a flavour of the month kind of thing, that we're so quick to jump on a boring race, call it boring and say the sport sucks and we want to go back to 2004 again. We like controversy. Like, F1 being in a crisis is the most interesting thing about Formula 1. It's not just about great racing when it comes to, trying to entertain Formula 1 fans on a larger level. The controversy, the crisis points, the drama regarding the sport is the reason why we all talk about it. It's the reason why you're watching this video and are subscribed to my channel. It's the reason why we talk about Formula 1 beyond just an average race weekend every 2 weeks. Not to mention, we live in the age of new journalism. It's not like the NFL that has a rolling news story every day where you can afford to have an hour and a half of dedicated coverage every round. Formula 1 only has races every 2 to 3 weeks normally, or between 1 and 3 weeks most of the time, and media entities like Sky need to create a role in narrative. I mean, look at who the talk was about when Hamilton looked like he was going to run away with the championship. Everyone was talking about Max Verstappen being a future world champion, and the running joke about him being the next Ayrton Senna because he's a young kid who happens to be a little bit more aggressive than the average driver. Ooh, shocker. See, you say that now, but in the midst of all this, what we've lost is the fact that 1, Nico Rosberg's won 3 of the last 4 rounds, and 2, despite everybody thinking Hamilton is the better driver and Hamilton is crushing this title, he's only leading by 10 points at the moment. If Formula 1 and fans captivating an interest was just about great racing, Moto3 would be the best racing series on the planet, bar none, and everybody would watch it. But they don't. It's not about that. People are obsessed with the pinnacle, and people will always watch. And I find it funny that it's now become the trendy thing amongst motorsport fans to use the World Endurance Championship as kind of the stick to beat Formula 1 with, because, oh, the WEC has great passing, and the WEC has wheel-to-wheel battles. How many people actually watched Silverstone and Spa as well as Le Mans? And, you know, Le Mans as a race that barely has any consistent battling and passing, as it's a 24-hour race. But so many fans are so utterly captivated by the spectacle of Le Mans, not to mention the fact that, one, you had Nico Hülkenberg taking part in this year's race, and the story of him and his teammates Tandy and Bamber winning was, you know, a big captivating deal, and they were thoroughly entrenched by that, even though Le Mans as a spectacle itself is amazing, but had very little on-track action, especially in the lead-in prototypes everybody seems to love so much. But, you know, narrative and whatnot, it doesn't really make any sense. But then again, neither does using the WEC to bash Formula 1 when they're 2 separate entities. But that could be for another video. The whole thing, I think, in my opinion, can be summed up by a great Twitter rant that motorsport.com's Pablo Elizalde came out with yesterday. It was about this time, as we're recording yesterday, where he tweeted, "Every pointless F1 is dead stats will be followed by equally pointless F1 is not dead stats." Here's the thing, crises are great for Formula 1. There's no need to deny them or dismiss them, you can just accept them. If people followed Formula 1 just for the racing, you'd have nothing to talk about the Tuesday after the race. If people just wanted great racing, Moto3 would be the most popular series in the world. I'll let you in on a little secret. The racing in Formula 1 has never, ever been great on a regular basis. If Twitter had existed during the 1979 French Grand Prix, people would have been like, "What the fuck is Arnoux doing? He's going to take Villeneuve out." Having said that, yeah, fix F1 please. And he posted this great quote from Marcel Pagnol where he goes, "The reason people find it so hard to be happy is that they always see the past better than it was, the present worse than it is, and the future less resolved than it will be." F1 fans are completely guilty of this crime. We are completely guilty of glamorizing the past to make it look better than what it was, so we can use it as a weapon to beat the current, and then to be cynical about the future. Just look at how many people talk about the early Schumacher days when the cars sounded nicer and the cars were better looking. Yeah, the races were boring during that period too a lot of the time. Yeah, you had better wheel-to-wheel racing now and again, but on the whole, the racing was never that much better, if at all, than what we're getting at now. I mean, I sat through the 2004 Formula 1 season where Michael Schumacher won 12 out of the first 13 rounds. And people want to complain about this era having a dominant Mercedes team? Yeah, look at last season. Last season, I rated Canada, Hungary, and one other race, it was Bahrain, where I rated them all 9 out of 10 ratings or better. Germany, Britain, Circuit of the Americas were all very good races as well. And this was with a dominant Mercedes team in there. I think some of us fans are taking this current era for granted. Not every race is going to be a 9 out of 10 classic like a Moto3 or a Formula E, for example, which has had great racing in the season throughout, because it's a spec series. That's the big reason why Formula E has been so captivating to watch this year, because all the cars are pretty much the same. And like I said, we've glamorized the past. The Schumacher era was hardly much better than this. But hey, the car sounded better, right? So of course that era was better. Yeah, hearing the same wailing engine does get boring no matter how nice it sounds after a while. So for me, it's a moot point, and it's kind of fickle on the whole in my humble opinion. Not to mention, people talk about, oh, the 90s and Senna versus Prost. The 90s was full of dominant teams. People accused Schumacher's Benetton of having traction control. Williams had two super good cars in 92 and 96 when Mansell and Hill dominated to win championships. The Senna versus Prost rivalry was completely overrated at McLaren because of team orders that the McLaren had at the time, which was only made more captivating because F1's modern hero, Ayrton Senna, broke team orders constantly so he could go out and win, hence why Prost left McLaren in the first place. Don't believe me? Watch Sky Sports F1's Legends of F1 special on Alain Prost to get his side of the story. You know, that side of the story which didn't make it into the original cinematic cut of the docufilm Senna, which you have to buy the Blu-ray to get the 3.5 hour long real version of Senna, which had an hour of Alain Prost interviews cut out of the final broadcast. Convenient, that one. Just remember this, if Ayrton Senna's big crash of Alain Prost in 1990 proved one thing, it's that we give Senna a pass for so much shit. Like, he took Prost out that day on purpose, and that's the one thing Ayrton Senna never took back. He always claimed that there was a gap there going into turn 1, when he knew if he took Prost out of the Grand Prix, he'd be champion. If this happened in 2015, where a guy deliberately, like, okay, imagine the scene if Nico Rosberg took out Lewis Hamilton deliberately during the final round of a season, if Rosberg was championship leader, took him out and would go on to win the race. Imagine the backlash that would have caused. There would be a nuclear it'll be a nuclear winter on the internet if Rosberg deliberately took out Hamilton to win a championship. He'd be the most hated driver in F1 history. But Ayrton Senna is looked at more positively by fans. Then hell, there was cost issues in the 80s as well as there is now in Formula 1. So yeah, the racing's never been consistently great, but we always focus on the little things like highlights, and we always focus on the little things like Senna being the personality that he was. We've dressed up the past to make it sound better than what it actually is. And we're using that as a current stick to beat up F1 now, and we're looking for excuses and reasons to criticise the sport. Now, I'm not saying F1 is perfect, and I would like to see a little bit of enhancement to the show, but at the same time, nobody was saying that last year when Daniel Ricciardo was becoming a superstar, or the moments where Mercedes weren't out on top, or when they were coming back through the field to have captivating races. You see what I mean here? We as F1 fans are hypocritical masochists. We're never realistically going to stop watching, and we take pleasure in bashing this sport often in the hopes it will suddenly get better. Newsflash, it isn't. So you've got to make a decision whether you want to keep watching this sport or you want to try and look for alternatives. The WEC might be one to you. Awesome. Give it a chance. The world of motorsport is far-reaching. I've started watching IndyCar this season, and IndyCar has been great this year. Marketable drivers, great personalities, a much more open environment, a much greater sense of humour and fun. More personalities like Conor Daly, James Hinchcliffe, Ryan Hunter-Ray, Scott Dixon, Will Power, etc. And I loved it. I've always been a MotoGP fan, and I think that's always been a viable alternative. So, you know, why not give something else a chance if you're not into F1? But if you're watching this sport constantly while constantly bashing it at the same time, you're part of the problem. And it's not going to change, and it's not going to get any better if you're going to be a masochist sitting there constantly ripping the product a new one, when in actuality, what we're going through right now is a great period. Sky are pouring great production value and money into this sport. We have the greatest driver lineup in F1 history. A true golden era for talent, with 5 world champions in the field, over 150 wins between the sport's best 5 drivers, the next wave of Nico Hülkenberg, Valtteri Bottas, Romain Grosjean, Nico Hülkenberg, Daniel Ricciardo is a superstar in the making. The rookie class has been superb this year. Guys, it's not as bad as you think it is. Why don't we try looking for the positives rather than looking for some things to nitpick so often? Because then maybe we might just start enjoying this sport a little bit more. Now, for the record, I'm not saying Formula 1 is perfect, nor do I hope it is. The sport will never be perfect, mostly because so many different F1 fans have a different idea of what they want their sport to be. Personally, I'd like to see more refinement to DRS, so it's not just an automatic overtake these days, which I'm glad F1 is starting to find a workaround for. Also, we need to do something about these engine costs that are really hurting the privateer teams, and I'd like to see ground effects aero come back to reduce the effect of dirty air, so you might get some more unpredictability and better wheel-to-wheel racing. But on the whole, the show is not really the problem with Formula 1 in my opinion, and to criticise this era for not having great racing, it's not really a valid criticism, if you ask me, because F1, despite being the pinnacle of motorsport, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the pinnacle of entertainment. Those things are mutually exclusive, and to be honest, I think we're overrating the past, and this current era, in my opinion, is better than I think we give it credit for. But of course, F1 is more of a what have you done for me lately kind of sport, and that has its own set of problems. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one as always. Do you think F1 is terrible right now? Do you think the past is as great as you guys like to think it is? Have I got this all wrong? I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. Until next time, I've been Harris101. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.